Arizona Territory. 1879, the sun was high and mean when Lawson Emery rode into the dusty town of Dry Creek, his hat tipped low and his horse slow from the heat. The place hadn't changed since the last time he passed through, just more dust and more silence. But what caught his eye this time wasn't the saloon or the blacksmith hammering iron. It was the girl on the ground. She was kneeling by the well in the center of town, her hand scraped, her lip bleeding. Spit clung to her cheek. A few men stood nearby, laughing like they had done something clever. One of them muttered, "Too dark for a place like this." Lawson stopped his horse and stared. The girl's skin was darker than most around here, the kind of rich brown that caught the sun in a way that looked golden. Her dress was worn but clean. She looked young, maybe barely grown, but the way she held her shoulders tight and trembling told him she had already lived through worse than small-town cruelty. Lawson dismounted and walked over with slow, even steps. His boots scraped the ground as he passed the men. "Something funny?" he asked, voice low and steady. The tallest one shrugged. "Just cleaning up the town, don't need her kind here." Lawson looked down at the girl. Her eyes met his, wide but not afraid. There was fire in them. She was trying not to cry. He reached out a hand. "You all right?" She hesitated, then placed her hand in his. He pulled her gently to her feet. "She yours?" One man asked, spitting into the dust. Lawson turned, his jaw tight. "That's my wife you're looking at," he said, clear and loud enough that the words hit like a bullet. The men went quiet. One of them looked like he might say something, but thought better of it. Lawson turned back to her. "Can you walk?" She nodded. He helped her onto his horse, then swung up behind her. He didn't look back. They rode out of town without a word between them, just the steady sound of hooves on dry ground. When they were half a mile out, she spoke. "You did not have to say that." Her voice was soft, but there was steel behind it. "I know," Lawson said. "But I meant it." She looked at him out of the corner of her eye. "You do not even know me." "I know enough." She was quiet for a long moment, then said, "My name is Hattie Finch, Lawson Emery. That was Dry Creek. You got anyone there?" "No," she said. "I was passing through looking for work." "Guess that was not smart. You got anywhere to go?" "No." "Then you are coming with me." She tensed. "You just said I was your wife. You do not mean that." "I do not say things I do not mean." He felt her look at him again, longer this time. "You always talk this straight, always." They rode for another hour, the desert stretching out wide and empty around them. He had a small ranch just outside a canyon 2 miles west. Nothing fancy, 2 horses, a few head of cattle, and a cabin with a porch that creaked when the wind blew. But it was quiet and it was his. He helped her down once they arrived. She looked around, taking in the wide land, the scrub brush, the hills in the distance. "This yours? Every acre? You live here alone?" "Used to be me and my brother. He did not come back from the war." "Been just me since." She nodded, thoughtful. He set her up in the house, showing her the wash basin, the spare cot, the pantry. She moved slow, still shaken, but she asked no questions he did not answer. That night they sat on the porch with plates of beans and biscuits. The sun dipped low, orange over the hills. She ate like she had not had a full meal in days. He watched her. "Where you from, Hattie?" "New Mexico." "My mama was Mescalero Apache. My father was black. They died when I was 15. I have been moving since." Lawson nodded. "You always this strong?" She looked at him, lips tugging in something close to a smile. "You always this kind?" He did not smile back. "Not to everyone." She looked down at her hands. "You do not have to keep me here. I will not stay where I am not wanted." "You are wanted here," he said. "That clear enough." She looked up, eyes shining. "You do not even know me." "I know you have not had a place to rest. I know you did not cry when they spit on you, and I know you are worth more than how they treated you." She blinked fast but said nothing. He stood. "You can stay in the house." I will take the barn if it makes you feel better. I do not want you to sleep outside." He paused. "Then I will stay inside, but you call the shots." That night she slept in the cot and he took the old chair by the fire. He watched the flames until they burned down low, her breathing soft behind him. He did not know what she had been through, but he knew pain when he saw it. And he had not lied, he meant what he said. The next morning she was already up, sweeping the porch. "You do not have to," he started. "I want to," she said. He smiled a little. "You hungry?" She nodded, and they ate together again, this time with eggs and toast. She talked more, told him about the desert in New Mexico, the way the sky stretched forever. He told her about his brother, about riding cattle drives when he was younger. She laughed at one of his stories. It was the first time he heard her laugh. As the days passed, she stayed. Helped with the horses, cooked meals, cleaned the house like it was hers. She never asked for anything, never complained. One evening she came in from the barn, hands dirty, hair loose from the wind. "I fixed the hinge on the stall door," she said. "It was crooked." He looked at her, really looked. "You fit here." She tilted her head. "You sure?" He stepped closer. "I have never been more sure." She watched him, eyes soft. "Then say it again." He reached up, brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. "That is my wife you are looking at." She smiled, slow and sure. "I could be." He leaned in just enough to feel her breath. "Then stay." "I already have," she whispered. And just like that, something shifted, something real. They were not strangers anymore. They were building something together. The rains came late that year, softening the hardpan and pulling green from the hills where it hadn't shown in seasons. Lawson had taken to fixing the fence line after the cattle pushed through the southern edge. And Hattie packed water in tin pails to soak the garden rows she'd started behind the cabin. She grew beans and squash from saved seed, her hands steady, her eyes tracking cloud shapes like she was reading omens. She didn't ask about his past, and he didn't press about hers. They moved alongside each other with the quiet knowledge of two people who had learned not to expect much, but still gave what they had. One afternoon, while she patched a tear in the sleeve of his only good shirt, she said, "There's a boy lives near the canyon bend, half Yavapai, I think. I saw him watching from the ridge yesterday." Lawson didn't look up from the saddle strap he was oiling. "He trouble?" "No," she said. "He looked lost. He ran when I waved." Lawson set the strap down. "You think he's hungry? I'd bet on it." He nodded once. "We'll leave bread out in the smokehouse tonight. He might not come. Then we'll leave it again." That night, she wrapped a loaf in cloth and set it on a low shelf in the smokehouse. Lawson added a tin of dried apples. They didn't speak of it again, but the next morning both were gone, and a smooth river stone had been left in their place. Summer came in slow, dry gusts. Hattie worked the land like she'd been born to it, bare arms browned from sun, a straw hat shading her face. She hummed sometimes while she worked, melodies without words that curled like smoke through the late afternoons. Lawson came home from town once with a bolt of muslin and laid it on the table without speaking. She ran her hand over the fabric and said, "You didn't have to." "I know," he answered. She sewed it into a new dress, pale blue, with a hem just long enough to brush the tops of her boots. She wore it the day they took the wagon north to exchange hides for grain. Folks in town stared again, but no one said a thing, not with the way Lawson stood beside her, quiet but rooted, like the land itself had chosen her. At the trading post, an older man with white hair and a glass eye eyed them both as they loaded meal sacks into the wagon. He said, "You from the Finch family out of Mescalero?" Hattie's shoulders stiffened. "My mother was. You knew her, not her. Her brother. He traded ponies down into Sonora. Honest man. Saved my life once in a flood south of Galena." Hattie took a moment before saying, "That was Uncle Thomas." The man nodded slowly. "Then you come from good blood." She said nothing, but her hands moved steadier after that. That evening, back at the ranch, she stood out by the trough, rinsing the dust from her arms. Lawson watched from the porch, the way her shoulders rose and fell, how the wind tugged at her skirt. "You mind if I ask you something?" he said. She turned, water still dripping from her fingers. "Ask. You ever think about staying, not just for now, I mean?" She looked toward the hills, then back at him. "Every morning I do." He stepped down from the porch and walked to her, slow so she had room to move if she needed it, but she stayed where she was. "You want this to be yours?" he asked. "Name on the deed, land passed between hands that trust each other." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached out and touched the edge of his shirt just where the stitching met his collarbone. "You'd give me all this?" He looked her in the eyes. "I already have." Her touch lingered. "Then I'll take it." They didn't kiss, not yet, but her hand stayed on his chest and his fingers closed gently over hers. The sun dipped behind the ridge and the first stars blinked awake overhead. Inside the cabin that night, she took the extra blanket from the cot and laid it at the foot of his bed without a word. Then she climbed in beside him, fully clothed, the silence between them steady as breath. He didn't reach for her. She didn't need him to. Come morning, she was still there, curled toward him, her hand tucked beneath her chin. When his eyes opened, she was already watching him. "Don't look like that," she said. "Like what?" "Like you don't believe it." He reached out, brushing a curl from her face. "I do." She smiled faintly. "Then get up. We've got beans to pick." And so they did. By late July, the garden rows had thickened with vines and the beans hung heavy. Hattie moved through them with a practiced ease, her hands quick, her eyes scanning for pests. She'd taken to keeping a ledger in the evenings, scratching tallies with a stub of pencil on salvaged paper Lawson found in town. He didn't ask what she planned for, just brought her more when he could. One morning, she paused at the edge of the corral, watching Lawson as he checked the gelding's hoof. The breeze pulled at the hem of her skirt, lifting dust into the air. She leaned her arms on the fence rail, quiet a long while. "Why'd you never leave?" she asked. He didn't look up. "Didn't see reason to. There's a whole country past these hills. You never wondered what's out there. I've seen pieces, enough to know I fit better here." She shifted her weight. "I think I used to believe the more I moved, the more I'd find. But it just kept being different versions of the same." He stood then, brushing dirt from his palms. "People tend to carry their ghosts with them, doesn't matter how far they go." She watched the horse paw at the dirt. "You got ghosts, Lawson." He met her eyes just for a breath. "I buried them deep, but they don't stay put forever." She nodded once, then walked back toward the house without another word. That afternoon, a wagon creaked down the trail. Hattie spotted it first from the front stoop, a finger of dust rising behind it. When it came close enough, Lawson recognized the driver, a wiry man with a wide hat and a jaw like a blade. Frank Toller, a trader who passed through once or twice a year, always with news and something half-broken to sell. Frank pulled up, teeth flashing through a wiry beard. "Heard you were still tucked up in these hills. Thought you might be bones by now." Lawson didn't smile, still breathing. Frank leaned out, squinting past him. "That your woman?" Hattie stepped down from the porch slowly, her hands steady at her sides. "I'm Hattie," she said. Frank looked her over too long, then turned back to Lawson. "She yours now, huh?" Lawson didn't flinch. "She's mine." Frank whistled low. "Well, ain't love a thing?" Hattie didn't blink. "You bringing something worth our time or just dust and talk?" Frank let out a bark of laughter. "I like her." Lawson stepped forward. "What do you want, Frank?" "Got word from Fort Bowie. Apache scouts passed through last week. Said there's talk of white men squatting near the Black River, tearing up graves. Could turn ugly." Lawson's jaw tightened. That's far north. Not as far as it used to be. Hattie's eyes narrowed. You think it'll come this way? Depends if they find out who's responsible. Vengeance don't always travel in straight lines. Lawson nodded once. You tell them it wasn't anyone from here. Already did, Frank said. But they don't trust easy these days. He leaned back on the bench seat. You got anything to trade? Lawson motioned toward the barn. 2 hides and a saddle tree. Take a look. While Frank wandered off, Hattie picked up the water bucket and dipped it into the trough. You believe him? She asked. About the graves? Lawson nodded. Wouldn't lie about that. She dipped a ladle full and passed it to him. You ever been north of the Gila once? Cold wind, even in summer. You thinking of going? She shook her head. No, just wondering what else is out there. Besides trouble. He drank, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. There's beauty too, but it don't mean much without someone to share it. She looked at him then, for longer than before. That night after Frank had gone, they sat by the fire without oil lamps. The moon was full, casting light through the window slats. Hattie worked thread through a tear in her apron while Lawson sharpened a blade on the whetstone. You ever think about raising something more than crops? She asked. He paused, stone midway along the knife. Like what? Goats or maybe? A child. Lawson set the knife down gently. You wanting that? Her voice was quiet. Someday. With the right man. He didn't answer right away. The fire cracked once, then settled. I'd want that too, he said. She folded the apron across her lap, eyes on the embers. Then we're thinking the same way. He looked at her, the way her hands rested still now, her posture softened but sure. You'd marry me? He asked. She met his gaze. I already have. He reached across the space between them, took her hand in his. No ceremony, no witnesses. Just 2 people choosing something solid. Outside, the coyotes yipped somewhere far off. Inside, they sat with their palms pressed together, the fire warming more than just the room. September brought a sharpness to the wind, the kind that sank into the joints and warned of early frost. By then, Hattie had planted winter peas and turned the last of the beans under the soil to compost. The porch roof still needed mending where a storm had torn a board loose, and the chimney smoked too much when the wind turned south. But they'd made enough progress that the place felt lived in, intended. One morning, while loading kindling into the scuttle, Hattie paused at the sound of hoofbeats quick and light, not heavy like a draft horse. She stepped out and saw the boy again, the same one who had left the river stone. He stood just beyond the fence, a lean shape with long black hair and a coat patched at the elbows. Lawson's in the barn, she said gently. The boy didn't answer, just watched her with a guarded expression. You hungry? His gaze flicked to her hands. She nodded once and went to the kitchen without waiting for him to follow. She wrapped leftover cornbread in a strip of cloth and brought it out. When she held it out, the boy stepped forward slowly, took it without touching her fingers and backed away again. He didn't speak, but his eyes lingered on hers just a moment before he turned and disappeared down the trail. Later, as they shelled peas at the table, Lawson said, That boy's not just passing through. He's keeping watch. I thought the same, Hattie said. He knew I'd seen him. Didn't try to hide this time. Lawson pushed a thumb into a pod. You think he's alone? If he's not, they're keeping well out of sight. They worked in silence for a while before Hattie said, You ever think about why he keeps coming back? Lawson looked at her. He sees something here he doesn't want to lose. That night, while the fire burned low and the shutters knocked lightly in the wind, Hattie pulled a small bundle from beneath the cot. She unwrapped it on the table, 2 pieces of worn leather tied with sinew and a necklace strung with red clay beads. Lawson leaned over. Yours, my mother's, she said softly. She carried these when we moved camps. said they reminded her where she came from. He touched the edge of the leather, careful. "You thinking of leaving them at the grave?" Hattie shook her head. "I'm thinking of giving them to someone who still needs to remember." Lawson glanced toward the window. "The boy," she nodded. "If I can find where he sleeps." The next morning they tracked him, not with guns or pressure, just a quiet walk beyond the rise where the scrub grew thicker. Lawson noticed the faint trail first flattened grass, a bit of canvas snagged on a mesquite limb. After an hour, they found the small hollow where someone had built a lean shelter of branches and hides. No fire ring, no tools, just a blanket and a carved stick left in the dirt. Hattie set the bundle beneath the edge of the blanket and whispered, "For when you're ready." They didn't speak on the walk back. By the following week, the boy stopped hiding. He came near the corral one afternoon, waited until Hattie looked up from feeding the hens, then approached on foot. He didn't speak, but he pointed to the barn and pantomimed a hammering motion. "You want to help?" He nodded. Lawson handed him a mallet and let him drive nails into the split rail. The boy worked with a quiet focus, his movements precise. When dusk fell, he vanished again, but not before taking a tin of stew Hattie left on the fence post. That evening, Lawson sat on the edge of the bed, unlacing his boots. Hattie brushed her hair at the wash basin, her eyes meeting his in the mirror. "He's not just a boy," Lawson said. "He's a scout." "Young but trained," she nodded. "I know, he's measuring us. You think we pass," she set the brush down. "We're not hiding anything." Lawson leaned back on his elbows. "You'd stay even if they came asking questions." "I've answered harder ones." He reached for her hand. "You've made this place more than it was." She turned toward him. "It was already enough. You just didn't know it." The wind pressed against the cabin, carrying with it the scent of pine from the higher ridges. Hattie blew out the lantern and they lay in the dark, warm under the quilt she had stitched from old shirts. Her breathing slowed beside him, steady and calm. At first light, hoofprints circled the boundary of the property, barely visible but deliberate. They didn't speak of them. Instead, Hattie pulled the kettle to boil and Lawson went to check the livestock. When he returned, she was standing at the stove, her hair braided down her back, the fire casting gold across her cheek. He stepped behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist and rested his chin on her shoulder. She didn't move, just leaned into him. "You know what I want?" she asked. "What's that?" "A table big enough for more than two, for whoever might need a place to sit." He kissed her temple. "We'll build it this winter." She nodded, and they stood like that a while together in the stillness, already shaping the life they'd chosen. The frost came early, settling in silver lace along the porch railings and biting into the last green of the garden. Hattie woke before dawn, pulling her shawl tight against the cold, and stepped into the yard with a basket tucked under her arm. The hens clucked low in their roost, feathers puffed against the chill. She scattered feed, rubbed her hands together, and watched her breath rise in soft clouds. Inside, Lawson was setting strips of salt meat into the skillet, the cast iron already hissing. He glanced up as she came in, and she hung the shawl by the stove without speaking. He turned back to the pan. "Saw smoke to the east last night." She tied her hair back. "Campfire or burn off, too steady for burn. Could be the boys' people keeping distance." She poured hot water into a basin, steam curling up. "They've stayed quiet this long. I don't think they mean harm." "I don't either." He flipped the meat. "But it's worth knowing." After breakfast, they hitched the wagon and drove west to the edge of the ridge where the cottonwoods were thinning for the season. Hattie carried a basket with wrapped bundles, sacks of cornmeal, a tin of lard, and 2 folded shirts stitched from spare cloth. She left them in the hollow where the boy had once slept, nestled beneath a flat stone. "On the walk back," she said, "I've been thinking about a schoolroom." Lawson adjusted the collar of his coat. "For who?" "Anyone who wants to learn." She stepped over a root. "There's more children than we see. Some hide in the hills. Some ride past with wagons, never stay long, but they're out here." He looked at her sidelong. "You want to teach? I want them to have something solid, something that don't vanish just because the wind changes." He didn't answer right away. Then, "We've got extra boards in the barn, enough to frame a room." Her eyes lifted. "You'd help me build it. I'd help you raise the walls myself." That night, she laid her hand on his chest while they stood beside the hearth, firelight catching the curve of her jaw. "I want this to be more than a place to rest." He touched her chin, tilting her face to his. "It already is." She leaned into him, and he kissed her in the quiet. No urgency, just warmth and promise. By mid-November, the boy returned, not alone this time. A tall woman with weathered skin and a long braid rode beside him, her horse lean but strong. She dismounted without a word, her gaze sweeping the yard, the cabin, the smoke rising from the chimney. Hattie stepped forward. "You're welcome here." The woman's eyes settled on her. "You left gifts." "They weren't gifts," Hattie said. "They were offerings." The woman nodded once, then reached into her saddlebag and brought out a small bundle wrapped in suede. She handed it to Hattie. Inside was a necklace made of bone and turquoise, the string worn smooth with age. "For the child," the woman said. Hattie hesitated. "I'm not, you will be," the woman answered. Lawson was beside her now, silent but steady. The woman placed a hand on the boy's shoulder and turned to leave. They didn't stay the night, but they left something behind, a kind of understanding that didn't need words. When snow came, it came soft. The porch creaked under its weight, and the trees bent slightly with the hush of it. Hattie moved slower now, her hand resting often on the curve of her belly. She carried the same calm she always had, but Lawson watched her more closely, his hands gentler, his steps more deliberate. They built the schoolroom side by side, raising timbers in the cold, hammering with gloves stiff from frost. By early spring, it stood finished, small but solid. Hattie painted the door pale yellow with leftover milk paint, and Lawson carved her name into the beam above the entrance. The first child came in April, a girl with shy eyes and a braided crown. Then came two more, one with a limp, one quiet as a stone. Hattie taught them letters and numbers and how to read the shape of a cloud for coming rain. Lawson took to riding less, staying near the house. He built a cradle from pine, each joint fit without nails, the wood rubbed smooth with beeswax. When he set it near the hearth, he looked at her and said, "It's ready." She gave birth on a warm night in early May, the windows open to the scent of wild sage. The midwife from the trading route came and went with quiet efficiency, and when dawn broke, Hattie held a daughter in her arms, dark curls, strong lungs, and wide, blinking eyes. Lawson sat beside the bed, his hand wrapped around Hattie's. "She's got your eyes. She's got your hands," Hattie said. "Look at the knuckles." They named her Clara after Hattie's mother. In the weeks that followed, neighbors came by in ones and twos, leaving gifts at the porch: blankets, jars of preserves, a small carved horse. The boy came again too, older now, with a bundle of herbs and a carved comb for Clara's hair. Hattie accepted each gift with grace, her arms often full, her eyes never tired. One evening, as twilight fell and Clara slept in the cradle near the fire, Lawson and Hattie stood out on the porch. The land stretched quiet before them, the scent of evening rain on the breeze. "You remember that day in Dry Creek?" he asked. "I remember every step since." He reached for her hand and brought it to his lips. "You changed the shape of my life." She turned to him. "You gave me a place to grow roots." They stood there, side by side, as the stars came out, each one steady, each one earned. Inside, the fire burned low. The cradle rocked gently. "And in that place, carved from dust and patience. Their love held fast, anchored not by promise, but by every quiet choice made along the way.